Now back to the news review now, and I want us to focus on what's happening in the fight against corruption. Of course, a lot of parallels can be drawn from the situation we face in those 12 counties that are facing hunger to the construction of dams that are supposed to supply constant water. And once again, you're already hearing the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution, Eugene Omala, saying that what we need to focus on is the construction of dams, water storage enhancement. We're back at the story of dams, and the Deputy President William Ruto fires salvo at Kinoti of a graft war. That is on page 5 of the Daily Nation, that he is accusing the DCI, George Kinoti, of being used to undermine Mega Jubilee project under the guise of fighting corruption. And once again, I know we have spoken about this earlier on, Senator Cherargei. I'm just wondering, how far can we go with this narrative that your party, deputy party leader, still insisting an officer who works within the government is doing the wrong job for the wrong reasons?
Thank you. I think everybody agrees that corruption in this country is cancerous and should be fought devoid of political witch hunt or any other political vested interests. In fact, what the DP and all of us are saying is very simple. The Constitution mandates economic crimes and the fight against corruption to ethics and anti-corruption, which is an independent body, and it has the capacity, ability, and the legal framework to fight corruption. But the DCI, of course, issues now, like you are saying about Reverend Nganga, pickpockets, among other issues of investigation. So what it's very simple that you know, if you look at the scheme in terms of ethnic profiling, in terms of politicization or imaginations or propaganda of corruption, again, some of these mega projects is targeting from one region. In it is to stall those projects, because now as we talk, the Kimwarer, Aror, among other dams in the country have to stop for some time. Yet we are discussing that the country does not have sufficient water supply, does not have water for irrigation to ensure that we have food security. Because every project, every mega project, if we continue raising speculations, even by the way, Sam, even the public servants in office nowadays, they just read newspapers, their eyes, the hands are tired, they are scared, they are intimidated, they can't implement anything within the government simply because there can be corruption, propaganda, and allegations in any decisions that you make. And if the country has to progress, we must ensure that if we have to do anything, we do within the law, in good faith, but not with the imagination of corruption, in guise of fighting corruption and undermining the development that we have in this country. And more so, finally, these are 2022 succession politics. It is as simple as that. And therefore, some of these top civil servants are in a scheme that is well choreographed to ensure that the 2022 succession politics is being built to a certain specific narrative. Senator,
I am lost, because I remember when the Deputy President spoke to Stephen Saka on BBC, he said that the government, the Kenyan government, that he is the Deputy President, was working so hard to ensure that all those who are corrupt are brought to book. Now you're saying that the DCI is doing a job that is supposed to be being done by EACC. We know the history of those institutions and the challenges that EACC has been facing. So is Kinoti the wrong man doing the right job, or you feel that he is being used exactly? How is he being used?
The law is very clear. EACC is an independent body that is being created by the Constitution. The EACC, I know it had a credibility crisis, but now we have a new CEO, Twali Mbarak, and EACC, the only challenge is that EACC, and we have already insisted, yes, last week I chaired the committee of JLAC and Multi-Agency Against the Fight Against Corruption, being chaired by the Attorney General. And the biggest challenge that EACC, just like other investigation agencies, is lack of mobilization resources where they have that ability to ensure they fight. And I think EACC, for example, does not have, even themselves they accept that they don't have enough manpower to ensure that they investigate some of these serious economic crimes. But the law is very clear that that work of economic crimes and the fight against corruption is the EACC work.
That is not
when the DCI, when you will talk, Ladama, you will have your time. When the DCI is coming in to investigate some of these serious economic crimes, then why should we have the EACC, Fight Against Corruption?
And that leads me to the next question. And Honorable Dan Manzo, here we are seeing the DP and his allies saying that the DCI should focus, and I quote, petty crimes and anti-bank fraud, and leave the war on graft to the EACC. Isn't that not downplaying an entire state agency in the midst of us fighting corruption? When you say that leave DCI to handle petty crimes and anti-banking fraud and let EACC do its job?
First and foremost, petty crimes, you find petty crimes officers in every police station in this country. You know, you have a police station, and you have a DCI, and then you have EACC. It is true that the Constitution says that EACC is to handle economic crimes, but you know EACC cannot operate without a backup of the initial investigation from the DCI. So the DCI handles serious crimes in the country, like murder, homicide, and even you know, theft. You see, other than economic crimes, this is theft of public resources in a mass way, and which is very well planned. So first of all, if the DP and his team were to be very honest, they will also help by giving information and by recording statements with the DCI or EACC, whichever is applicable, because any of those can. Supposing now an officer of EACC was also involved in corruption, who will investigate that particular officer? So the buck stops with the DCI, and we really want to encourage the DCI to do his work. He's been doing his work very well. I can assure you, in this country there is no homicide which is 3 days old, where there are no arrests and people have not been arraigned in court. And similarly, it should happen. So the biggest problem now in Kenya is corruption, and it needs to be fought by everybody, from EACC to DCI to normal police. You know, corruption runs from 2 shillings, 20 shillings to billions. So you can't say now because it is a billion, it is a matter of EACC, and when it is 100 shillings from a police officer, it's a DCI issue. It cannot be. So the fight of corruption, against corruption, is for everybody to participate. And even those who know they have taken public resources, they can also go and surrender. They can also come out, you know, to EACC, because the problem is people want to be taken to court. People want to be taken through a process so that they can run away with whatever they have stolen.
I think we're lucky to have 3 lawyers on the panel, so you'll help me interpret this. That I'm looking at the functions of the DCI. The current functions of the directorate as provided for under the National Police Service Act 2011 include, I'll just read what's relevant for us, undertake investigations on serious crimes, including homicide, narcotics crimes, human trafficking, money laundering, terrorism, economic crimes, piracy, organized crimes, and cybercrime, among others. Maintain law and order, and so many others. So, economic crimes, why would you say that it's not part of what the DCI should be doing?
No, because it would be a duplication of the both agencies of the EACC and DCI, and that is why if this thing is not politically motivated, the issue of narcotic and organized crime and even human trafficking has never. No. That is why even every Kenyan.
Don't run away from what I'm asking.
I'm answering you. I'm answering you. I'm just saying. When you look at the Constitution, you know, you are just reading at an act of a parliament, that's national police. So the Constitution is the parent. Hiyo ni mama yao. So you are just reading the legislation that has been passed by parliament. The Constitution takes precedent in terms of interpretation. That's why I'm saying, if this thing is not politically motivated, then apart from it from being in wrongly placed, that file it should not be with DCI, it should be with the ECC in terms of economic crimes. Let me just conclude.
No, I will not. Look at the Constitution and show me where the Constitution bars the DCI from investigating corruption and economic crimes. Senator Kajwang.
Well, Sam, my friend here, and he's a very good friend of mine. We are neighbors. I can knock my wall and he responds. He's a chairman of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of the Senate, an extremely powerful committee with members like James Orengo, Amos Wako, the Senator for Nyamira. In fact, all the senior counsels in Parliament are members of his committee. There are only 3 of them in Parliament.
Yes.
And they all sit in his committee. One of the most powerful and important committees in this country. Yes, last week, there was a meeting between his committee and the multi-agency task force, chaired by the Attorney General. And I know my brother here finds himself between a rock and a hard place. Because on one hand, he must be the chair of JLAC. But on the other hand, he must make sure that politics being local, he is seen to be singing the local tune. But I want to urge him, because I came to Parliament a few days before him, that he is in a very good position to help this country to break certain stereotypes that have been there and certain myths and lies that are being perpetuated currently. The EACC, and I also chair Public Accounts Committee, and the EACC is one of my primary stakeholders. When we make recommendations on counties or officials who have broken the law with regards to misuse of public funds, we expect the EACC to take action. But if they delay and DCI decides to take action, I'm not worried. A thief can be apprehended by a police officer, a police reservist, or a vigilante, as long as they are handed over to the rightful persons. And that is what DCI is doing. They are not the ones doing the prosecutions. The prosecutions are being done by the DPP. They are not the ones making the decisions. The decisions are being made by the judiciary. I think we are trying to kill a dog by giving it a bad name first. I have had sentiments attributed to some people I have held in high esteem. The governor is Governor for Nandi, Governor Sang, outrightly saying that Kinoti ni mtu ya mkono ya Uhuru Kenyatta. You can clearly tell where the problem lies. Okay. And when people are talking of weaponization of the fight against corruption, they're basically pointing a finger at Uhuru Kenyatta as being the one behind all these matters. There's nothing wrong with DCI undertaking investigations. Finally, maybe one final point that is relevant to the mandate of my brother here. What we need to be discussing is how to address the challenges facing EACC. He has mentioned funding, but there has to be a conversation about giving the EACC prosecutorial powers. We saw in the case of Ruaraka, EACC did investigations, sent a file to DPP. The DPP sent that file back to EACC almost 3 times. To date, we don't know what has happened.
So you think that EACC had prosecuting powers that would empower them more?
I believe that would empower them more.
All right, Senator Ledama, let me just pick up on that. On matters, President Uhuru Kenyatta, State House has recently released an extract from the Executive Order 4 that has kept many guessing on what is being contained there. People are talking about perhaps another cabinet reshuffle, this time round a major one, given that the last one did not live up to the standards that Kenyans had. Are you also expecting to see a major cabinet reshuffle with this new Executive Order 4?
I think before I comment on that, please allow me to weigh in on this matter of the law. And it is important for Kenyans to really educate themselves on functions of each independent body in this country. The functions of the DCI are clearly stated in the National Police Service Act 2011. And among these very, very strong functions, one is to conduct forensic analysis. There's no way you can expect any other person who does not have that qualifications to be able to carry out. Economic crimes, we are losing billions and billions of shillings. What we ought to do now is to support the DCI and not start fighting him. In fact, I was very happy when I walked into the set because I realized that we are now talking about the drought in Turkana. But we should not also allow succession politics to be able to derail the war on corruption. Getting into another issue that my colleague, Senator Kajuang, spoke about, which I don't agree with him, is that I don't believe that the EACC should be given prosecutory powers. I think that function should be left to the DPP. If at all the DPP can be able to constitute a section or a department which is attached or seconded to the EACC for them to be able to handle that work, then I can be able to support that. Because there's no way, I don't believe that we should have 2 bodies dealing with having prosecutory powers. That is subject to abuse, in my view. On this issue that you raised about the issues of major reshuffle coming in, or speculations, one thing I can tell you, I was very happy with what the president did. I don't think he followed the law, but I was quite happy. When he personally, through an executive order, appointed the director of KWS. When everyone else was going in for appointments, when they were going in for interviews, he went ahead and appointed the director of KWS. I think what the president ought to do, he's got to listen to Kenyans. Kenyans are bleeding. Kenyans are saying we have serious issues when it comes to the issues of water. You know, there are challenges there. We have serious issues when it comes to the issues of agriculture. There are challenges there. Last week, I read in the papers about the issue of about millions and billions of shillings worth of fertilizer, which is being held in the port, which is substandard. And now there's a lot of pressure for that substandard product to get into the country because of interest.
But Senator, you know, no CS goes for questioning, and we've seen it with Kiunjuri, Wamalwa and Rotich recently. No senator goes for questioning being brought to the DCI without the president knowing. A lot of Kenyans feel that Uhuru could have done more in the wake of this fighting corruption when it comes to his cabinet and setting things straight.
I disagree. I think what the president does, he does his work and he gets a brief. But the DCI is independent. And when the DCI are carrying out a forensic audit, like in this case, I would want to believe that on the issue of the economic crimes, on the issue of the money that Kenyans have lost in terms of dams, the DCI must have followed the money trail. So when you follow the money trail, you do not need to get permission from the president for you to be able to call in the CS and ask for, you know, and investigate the matter. Okay. In fact, no one is above the law, so everyone ought to be investigated. So even if it's Matiang'i, who is the head of that, that department that deals with DCI, the DCI should also go ahead and investigate that person. That is the only way that we're actually going to be able to come out and really fight corruption in this country.
All right, feedback on text 22422, not very kind ones, allow me just to read it out. We must fight corruption. We must fight corruption. Those asking DCA to focus on pickpockets are the guilty. In fact, we need to move towards citizens' arrests. And as the president remarked, well, that doesn't make sense. The politicians for sure know money was stolen and are just engaging in wishful thinking. Then on Twitter, there's someone who is tweeting not exactly on this topic, but what are the lorries queuing for? Didn't the farmers read that their leaders harvested maize from their farms in Mexico and sold it to the board? The stores are full, the money is gone. Pelekeni mahindi nyumbani.